Welcome back, you filthy exiles. You guys have been asking me for this build for about a week or so now, week and a half, and I've finally been leveling it up. So this is my true block Vortex Occultist that you guys have seen me playing on stream for the last few nights. How much does this cost, you might ask? Significantly cheaper than a build with Aegis Aurora, though that being said, you still need a shavs, which I sort of got my way through most of this with a 5-link shavs. Um, Obviously, and we got Delve going off, so I'm just going on to D&D because I'm selling fossils again. Things like, your presence at Cholula is like 50 chaos, Prism Guardians like 15 chaos, shavs 6-linked is like 2 divine. Don't look at that, that's not accurate. And like my gloves I crafted, my boots I crafted. Yeah, or you just type in 150 ES, or you can use Syntrek boots. I do use a Vivisect, which is like a 5 chaos item, and a Crown of the Inward Eye with a Zealotry roll on it, which is about 1 divine. Yeah, give or take. And my wand, isn't the best in slot wand. It's pretty ratchet, to be honest with you. But like 20C1 with a craft on it to trigger socketed spells. So like, I have a bottled faith on it, which is 4 divine. So as it is currently, it's like, probably 10 divine worth of shit. Including like, I've got the wrong cluster jewels on it right now. I've got fire damage over time and not damage over time or cold dot. But it's all G. When you look at this build and you're like, holy shit, this is super defensive. And actually when we pump it in right as it is, it's 165,000 effective hit pool against pinnacle bosses. If you like reel this back to what you'll actually be versing in like Delve, which isn't like Shaper or Guardian damage, right? Standard bosses, it's somewhere closer to like 200,000. And if it's like none of that, it's 1.285 million, which means nothing, but we all read damage reduction like this. But for the amount of investment, it's got like mage blood level defense. And I'll explain why. So this build actually uses the element of true block, which is something you could do really easily on the Gladiator at one point, but not something easily achieved in any other build, which now is actually hard on the Gladiator because spell block's not easy to come by. So how do I do this? Well, another couple of things to also bear in mind. I don't have Purity of Elements on this build, and I'm stun immune, ignite immune, chill immune, frozen immune, and shock immune. And I'm coming through to almost having, a good amount of bleed avoidance as well, without having corrupted blood on the build because I regenerate so quickly. Just idling, my base regeneration sits at like 313 and then starts to sort of go up and up to like the 3000 level from all the jewels that I have in this. So this also uses true block here. So if I pop my flask, I have 64% attack block, and then I get another 6% when I hit maximum, or another 5% when I hit maximum endurance charges, which I actually have a cluster jewel, small cluster jewel to account for that. My spell block is pretty much maxed out at 73% because the cap is 75%. So spells basically do nothing to me unless they hit me, and then I've got enough regeneration to recover from that. The only thing that really hurts this build in Delve is if you get hit really fast from hasted enemies and it breaches your block recovery rate, or if you're on dot that you can't mitigate against. And this has a good amount of chaos resistance too, which could still be better. So the way that we get max attack block to make this work is pretty simple. We use Enduring Ward on our, in our small cluster. This gives us endurance charges when we block, so we get up to max, and we have 4 endurance charges, which increases our phys damage reduction significantly. And you get up to 6% chance to block attacks. And then we literally take every single block node we can get for attack block down here, and then we run twin reckless defenses with high point rolls or 4% block rolls on attack block. And that's pretty much how I got to max block, or almost max attack block. With a Rumi's concoction, you can get to true block, and as you'll see, no glancing blows. So the disadvantage of glancing blows is it's good on Aegis Aurora, but you still take 65% of the damage from the hit. This build, you block 100% of hit, like you block up to 75% of hits, you take no damage at all. It's just like that 1 in 4 chance that you might get hit, and there's enough armor in this build to take that one hit, and by the time your block kicks back in, your 3200 energy shield recharge kicks in, and so you don't even need Wicked Ward because you block so much with this build, and you're good as, you know, you're right as rain. As well as we also have, upon block, we also have Safeguard, so when you block spell damage, you recover 50 energy shield as well. So this really takes block and just abuses it, fundamentally. And so that's what I'm playing in Delve right now. And I'll give you a bit of a run through before we go through the POB and really like fine detail, so you can see what the build looks like. I'm currently sitting at about 300 Delve, and I leveled this up, like I just stopped dying. I'm down to 312 and just pushing down. So let's get into some footage. I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so the run you saw there was just going down at like 310, and realistically didn't really take any damage. Now, I will say this, the damage they have on this build right now with a shitty wand or whatever is like 853,000 cold dot. With a better one, it'll probably get to like maybe 1.3, 1.4 mil, and then like close to like 2 mil in the end. It's not made for like face melting levels of DPS, because in Delve the priority isn't really DPS, the priority is actually survivability. And so things will take longer to kill. Does it do T16 maps? Easily. Map bosses, even if they're juiced up, take a little longer on Alkengo map bosses, but that's okay. We really only map with this for Sulfite. Now, can it take like all the Crystal King and stuff like that? Arguably yes, but it'll just take a very long time. If anyone's watched my stream, I use my VF Totem, basically my boss killer, to just jump in, do that one column, and then just smash the boss, and then come back to this character, and keep farming up Azurite and whatnot in the mines. That tends to be the strat with this character. It's very much made for like pushing down in the Delve or horizontally farming fossils and Azurite to buy resonators, not so much for killing bosses. So if you're after a boss killer, this isn't going to be the build for you. Anyway, talking about mechanics, let's sort of talk about the build. So if we go to configuration, you always have energy shield. Where we're low life, we basically thrive off energy shield to survive. And low life means that we use a Prism Guardian and we reserve our life pool. So we basically have this shield here, which allows me to reserve life instead of mana, and we have 30% increased reservation efficiency to do that. And we can only do this because we have the Chevron's wrapping, which means chaos damage taken does not bypass the energy shield. So it means that you can reserve life and chaos damage will hit your energy shield as opposed to it directly hitting your life. So for anyone who hasn't played a low life character, if you were to just use any old like, you know, piece of armor on this, right, to get ES, it would just cut straight into your 200 health and kill you straight away, any chaos damage, where this stops that from happening. There is a shield that allows you to do that, but you would lose the ability to have the Prism Guardian. And there's also the Solaris Lorica that allows you to do this, which is very hard to off-color to blue socket because it's a red bait, it's a strength base. And there is a flask that allows you to do this as well, but it's really unreliable, and usually you play that with mana stackers, so you use Ivory Tower or whatever it is to do that. So this is the most reliable way to play low life, just getting into it. So anyway, talking about the mechanics of the build. So if we go to configuration, Frenzy Charges actually comes from Cold Snap. So we have Cold Snap set up on an auto setup, and this allows you 25% chance to gain Frenzy Charges when an enemy dies in the skills area. So when enemies die, you get a Frenzy Charge, and that caps out to max, so that's a pretty good probability of that happening. Endurance Charges, this, as noted, comes off this cluster here, which is Enduring Ward, so 20% chance to gain Endurance Charges when you block. This is maximum true block, so you're always going to block, so you generally always have maximum endurance charges. Onslaught, this is built into my boots. 11% chance to get Onslaught for 4 seconds on kill. Flask is active, no brainer. I got active Flask. Consecrated Ground, this comes from my Bottled Faith, which is probably the most expensive item in this build. Enemies nearby 10, we're in Delve, that's just like, there's like 200 near you, so, you know, we could go 200, and it doesn't really do anything beyond 10. Enemies killed recently, well, we're always killing enemies, so, you know, this doesn't really affect me, but it just increases my energy shield regeneration because I'm always killing enemies. Have you been hit recently? Getting hit while blocking still counts as getting hit, so yes, always getting hit. Boss, Guardian, and Pinnacle, and you know, bosses are ticked on, so the damage is scaled, but realistically it does go up, which explains why it hurts so much killing Delve enemies. Going down on here, nothing else is ticked. Scorched Ground, yes, this is because my boots have the implicit drop Scorched Ground while moving, which increases my damage a fair bit. If we tick that on and off, you can see like it's like 100 and something thousand, 150, whatever that is. Enemy is chilled. This has no effect, but yes, and this isn't coming from my Vortex, this is coming from my Cold Snap and my Frost Bomb. Enemy exposed to cold, yes, this is coming from my Frost Bomb, so that is happening. And enemies on Consecrated Ground, again, this comes from my Bottled Faith. So that's pretty much the mechanics of the build, like the tree as it's set out. And so, like, outside of this, some things just to bear in mind. It does use Presence of Cholula. To get the 20% quality, you need to get a defense catalyst. And so you quality that up to 24% until you get 24%, which is at 20%. This does use it does stack a fair bit of armor, and that's coming from Determination, but a lot of that armor is coming from Crown of the Inward Eye. To be able to get all the auras on the build as well, you will need the Zealotry craft on it. If you don't have that, then just drop Zealotry altogether and use another aura like Vitality or something like that until you level that up. Wand-wise, you know, we'll talk about gearing when we get to the gearing section. Now, curses. How do I get my curses on? So it does use 2 curses in this build, and it uses Whispers of Doom to achieve that because I use very different ascendancies to get my survivability up versus how I've played this in the past. The way I get my curses is I have one set up on my ring, which is curse enemies with frostbite on hit, and then I have one set up in my helm, which does Reckoning and Enfeeble and Hex Touch support. So when my Reckoning hits an enemy, it applies the curse from the Reckoning proc, so it hits the enemy with Enfeeble, which increases my defense even more. which gives me, you know, anywhere up to nearly 29% less damage taken and 18% less damage taken from bosses. So that's just a couple of things that I've done to sort of juice this build up. The implicits as well, you get damage over time, implicits on the gloves, and exposure, which is also where more exposure comes from. So that's also a thing. Anyway, that's the mechanics of the build. So let's talk about the gearing. Okay, for gearing, I'm running a Crown of the Inward Eye with Zealotry enchant. I'm running a Presence of Chayula, which is pretty standard for low life builds. I'm running a Prism Guardian, which you will need to reserve auras against your health pool, and so you'll need one of those. I'm running a Vivisect Ring, and how this works is for every uncorrupted item, I get 15 increased life regeneration, which that then translates to ES regeneration when we use the Zealot's Oath node. So it gives you a huge uplift to survivability. So that's a really good ring. And I run Discipline in my ring as well to get it up to level 25, because it gives you +5 to socketed gems that go in that ring. My chest, I'm running Shavs because I need the chaos damage does not bypass energy shield, which synergizes with the low life setup that I'm running and the Prism Guardian setup to reserve life for auras. My other ring has curse enemies with frostbite on hit. This is needed because that allows me to proc Profane Bloom really effectively, so you will need this in the setup. My wand is a +1 level to all cold skill gem wand, and it also gives me cold dot, a little bit of spell damage, and trigger a socketed spell. This isn't a great one, and in future videos this will be upgraded. Gloves, literally just all resistances, energy shield, +1 to socketed level of skill gems because I have my aura skills in this one. And also increased damage during flash effect was just a lucky roll I got, so I went with it. Boots, biggest thing on the boots is Scorched Ground. This gives you a lot more damage, and then obviously Onslaught, and you want at least 150 ES on this. I use a Cyclopean Coil, and I have a corrupted one here for an increased effect to Malevolence. The reason why is I stack more strength than my dexterity, as you can see here, which allows me to be immune to ignites. So that ticks my other box to being immune to all elements, which means I basically have a Purity of Elements effect without having to run Purity of Elements auras, and I'm already overcapped on every res, so I have Purity of Elements without Purity of Elements, which is really cool. Also, I have max block, so, you know, I'm basically immune to most sources of damage. And then flasks, I just have Quicksilver, Roomies, Bottle of Faith, and just a Ruby and Sapphire just to reduce damage a little further. For the gem setups, in the helm I'm running Enfeeble, Pulverize with Reckoning, and Hex Touch. You don't need Pulverizers, got it in there because I can. In my one setup, which auto triggers the spell that's socketed, is Cold Snap, Hypothermia, and Bone Chill. In my shield, I've got Tempest Shield, Malevolence, and Determination. In my chest piece, I've got Vortex, Awaken, Control Destruction, Empower, a level 3 Empower I should add. Swift Affliction, Elemental Focus, and Cruelty, which is going for as much damage as I can get, even though this build is not damage focused. And then in my gloves, I've got Hatred, Zealotry, Clarity, and Frostplink. And in my boots, I've got Custom Damage Taken, Molten Shell, Void Sphere, which is super useful in Delve, and Frostbomb. So Void Sphere basically pulls enemies off you and basically moves them around so that you're not always being constantly hit, which is a really good utility. It sort of slows them down as well. The Frostbomb's leveled up well beyond the cast and damage taken setup because I want to self-cast that as well, not wait for it to proc for when I take any damage. But that's it for gem setups, really basic. Okay, so for the skill gems, I pretty much went straight up into here to pick up Arcane Focus and Arcane Will. I came down and I actually didn't build up into here until I built down here. So I went straight down to Leadership first, through to Foresight. I came up through these nodes. I picked this up later in the piece and I went up into this corner node here to get Arcane Guarding, down to Sovereignty, down to Faith and Steel, and then sort of stopped at this node and then went down this node line here to pick up Sanctuary and the shield nodes here because they're quite important. The 1% chance to block attack damage per 5% to block unequipped shields, really important as well. This will give you a lot more attack blocks so you can get to max block. And then I also picked up Divine Shield. Obviously, we're low life. And we stack a shitload of armor with Determination. Pardon me. So we need that to be able to reduce physical damage inbound. Divine Judgment. And then I came back down and I picked up Insightfulness, Regeneration, and then also Safeguard. And this gives you all your spell block nodes as well, so you can max out your spell block. So spell block's quite easy, and you'll need all these spell block nodes here too. Once you get your low life setup running and you got, you know, your Shavs and whatever, or your Solaris Lorica or whatever you've got going, you'll need to switch to Zealotos straight away. And so then you'll come up the other way, make sure you got Pain Attunement, and then you come up, you grab Influence. I also have Whispers of Doom, and then I use Recover 1% life and mana when you curse a non-cursed enemy, which means in Delve, any enemy that you curse that hasn't been cursed, you get 1% life regeneration straight away, which is translated to ES regeneration, which makes you super sustainable because you're always cursing. So you get really high levels of ES regen very quickly. And then I have a triple large cluster here with Prismatic Heart, Widespread Destruction, and Deep Chill. And so you grab these to the side of these nodes. You don't need Widespread Destruction because it's just there so we can get Deep Chill and Prismatic Heart. And then you'll need Brush with Death and Vile Reinvigoration. As you can see, you get a lot of regeneration for ES and percentage on kill. And so you regenerate 2% of energy shield per second if you've killed an enemy recently. So Delve, you're always killing. So this is really good. Then I have Enduring Ward. This gives me 20% chance to get endurance charges when I block, and because I max block, and this includes on spell block and attack block, I always get my charges. And then you get another 6% chance to block attack damage once you get your max endurance charges, which is 4. And then I also have a Watcher's Eye on the other medium cluster, which you get 8% chance to block attack damage while affected by Determination. And this pushes you over the threshold of pretty much getting to the point where you have max block with Runic Concoction and all endurance charges up, which is what makes this build so damn powerful. And the other thing to bear in mind, I run 2 Reckless Defense jewels in here too, and I make sure that I have the max attack block on these jewels. Now, the 10% chance to be frozen, shocked, or ignited is completely negated by the fact that I am immune to all of that. So the downsides don't affect this build, but you get all the upsides with none of the downsides, and it's a 3 to 4C item, so it's dirt cheap as well. That's it for the tree. Now for the ascendancies, the way that I unlock mine, I came down to Frigid Wake first. Pardon me, I was up all night. And then I got Vile Bastion, and then finally Profane Bloom. So obviously we don't have the Malediction anymore. I'll be honest with you, it did drop DPS. I'm not disappointed by it though. I still do good amounts of DPS, but my survivability with Vile Bastion is just way higher. Like so much energy shield regeneration, it's ridiculous. That's it for the setup. Oh, and the Pantheon that I use is Soul of Linares and Soul of Tukahama at the moment. Though I could switch to Soul of Aberith, or potentially Soul of Shikari, depending on what's killing you more. Alright, so anyway, this is just a update number 1. There'll be more updates for this build, but yeah, if you want to play it, the POV will be in the description. Feel free to pull it out, do whatever you want with it. Feel free to adjust it any way you want. This is not the most damage that you can get on this build, it goes way higher. But this one, don't expect like huge sums of damage, but it does do like RF equivalent damage, which is really good. So if you're picking between RF or this, you know, you could go either way. This is probably much cheaper, and this is also much cheaper than my old style of build that I used to put together for Delve as well, though that one had more damage. And it was pretty defensive, but I feel like this could be much easier to get down to lower levels without a Mage Blood, because it's immune to ailments and everything, whereas the other one wasn't. Anyway, until next time, like and sub, and have a good one.